And now back to our top story. Today's revelation that 20,000 defence security clearances will have to be rechecked. A short time ago, I was joined from Canberra by the opposition spokesman on defence, David Johnston. David Johnston, thanks for talking to us.
Pleasure.
What evidence do you have that 3 Labor ministers back in 2010 knew about the allegations that security in embassies and on military sites was being compromised by substandard security checks at the DSA in Brisbane?
Well, we only have the word of the people who are actually doing those checks, who informed a number of people, including people retained by government to do a report on what was going on, pertaining predominantly to bullying, but who also highlighted the fact that there were significant and serious shortcomings in the security vetting procedures being carried out. Now, a local member of Parliament, the then Labor member for Ford, was informed. He informed then Minister Griffin, who CC'd a letter complaining of precisely all of these important matters to a Cabinet Minister, Minister Emerson. Now, this all happened in 2010, and of course Minister Smith in the Defence Department comes along and says, I think it's in September or October, that there's a really serious problem. Well, gee, that problem has been on foot for longer than 12 months.
I've seen some of those letters this afternoon going between Warren Snowden, Brett Raguse and also Alan Griffin, and they seem to be about claims of bullying and harassment rather than the actual security vetting process.
And those whistleblowers, those people who are employed, say they told everybody about what they were doing with respect to workarounds, and indeed, if you look at some of the reports that we now know from Senate estimates today, existed at the time, they specifically address the issue of these security vetting shortcomings.
The Minister for Defence, Stephen Smith, who wasn't the Minister at the time, said today that these allegations are baseless. He said in a statement that allegations about security processes were subsequently raised in passing in the course of the investigation into harassment and bullying allegations. He seems to be saying that the allegations about vetting were raised later in the process.
Well, that's not what the evidence was today from senior defence officials. They said, yes, the evidence was raised, that specific mention was made of these shortcomings in the top secret and other classified vetting procedures were clearly identified, and that government did nothing about it. Now, you know, how much more of an alarm bell do you really need?
The Minister was referring to the Trent Brennan report, which was raised in Senate estimates today, and it didn't just cover the allegations of bullying and harassment, it did deal with those allegations of security breaches. Why were those allegations not followed up by the Department of Defence?
Well, it just seems they treated these whistleblowers as cranks. Now, you know, anybody who has dealt with people over a long period of time should know that when someone raises an issue as potentially problematic as this is, and bear in mind we've had to redo something in excess of 20,000 security vets, I stagger to think how much that's going to cost, and where the people who have been improperly vetted are now, but alarm bells should have gone off, and indeed any minister who was privy to any such information as this should have, as a matter of just obvious administrative propriety, gone further to say, hang on, this vetting regime has got integrity issues.
Do you think there's a cultural problem in the Department of Defence? Not only did they not follow up those allegations in the Trent Brennan report about security breaches, but the actual whistleblowers themselves say that they were bullied into stopped asking questions about the issue of security breaches.
Precisely. There is a shoot-the-messenger culture inside certain parts of defence, and I think this whole sorry saga is a bit of a smoking gun of an example of that.
Well, what does it say about the Department of Defence when it takes outsiders? These people were junior staff, they were hired by an outside Labor recruitment firm, and they were the ones who were blowing the whistle. They were telling their bosses that they weren't comfortable by this, and their bosses were saying, get on with your job.
Yeah, it is very, very concerning. And look where we find ourselves. We now have a Inspector General of Security and Intelligence inquiry, which has been commissioned by the Prime Minister herself. It doesn't get much more serious than this.
So Defence today in Senate estimates admitted that 5,000 top security clearances will have to be redone. What kind of people are we talking about working in those kind of areas?
Well, I'm a bit frightened to think about it, actually. We have embassies, foreign dignitaries, all coming to Australia, all being the subject of people with security clearances, doing rudimentary and fundamental jobs like servicing the aircraft and doing all these sorts of things. It is very concerning that this problem has come to the point that it has because it was ignored for so long.
You mentioned their foreign dignitaries. We've got the Queen here in Australia at the moment. We've got President Obama coming. Are you concerned that there could be people close to those kind of dignitaries who may not have passed proper security checks due to what's been raised by these whistleblowers?
Well, given that we now know of the problem, I hope and trust that I don't need to be concerned, and I'm probably not concerned. However, had this not come to light, obviously on a television program, your program, it seems the government would have just continued to ignore these people. Now, hopefully, the alarm bell has gone off and action has been taken such that in circumstances that you have mentioned, these dignitaries arriving soon, remedial action has been taken and there is no risk. And I'd like to think there is no risk. But, it's been a long, hard road.
So there's going to be 20,000 altogether clearances that have to be revalidated. How long will that process take?
Well, today the indications were that it's going to take some long time and be very, very expensive. 20,000 people, to investigate where they were born, their antecedent backgrounds, to do it properly, to communicate that information to ASIO, is a significant task, and it should not have come to this.
Will it take months? Will it take years?
I think it'll take something in excess of 6 months.
OK, so if it takes 6 months, we're talking about a period of time up to about 3 years from the beginning of 2009 when the whistleblowers first raised these problems about security checks. That's a very long time for embassies and for military bases to have potential flaws in the security checks.
Well, we will get to the bottom of who's been advised, what the percentage of problems have been with respect to these vettings, but at the moment we're still waiting on the Inspector General's report to understand the length and the breadth of the problem. Bear in mind the Defence Department is now somewhat removed from the picture. It's now with the Inspector General, and she's going to provide a report soon, we trust, that actually sets the parameters of how big this problem really is.
Given these whistleblowers said that they were under direct instruction from senior defence staff to fabricate security checks on civilian and military personnel, do you expect heads to roll?
Well, fabricate is an interesting word. I think we do get to what might be termed fabrication, but what they were using were workarounds, and that is because they were in a hurry, they put fictitious addresses and birth dates and other things like that into what were computer-sensitive forms. Now, that's a high-risk task at the best of times, and it's obviously got away from everybody. There's a significant problem with resourcing and oversight here that has led to this problem. But, we're going to find out from the Inspector General the depth and length and breadth of how severe this problem is, and I think it's very severe.
David Johnston, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you, Steve.